be fun. I'll let you know how it goes.
What I've done is I've gone in and I've taped up everywhere that I can find exposed stuff that I don't want to be painted. Basically wiring, lamps, and I've stuffed every hole that has threads in it with little pieces of paper towel so that I don't muck up the threads. And it looks like I missed one over here. Anything that has a clip that I want to include, or I want to prevent paint from getting in. And basically I removed the gaskets from all of the doors so that I don't have paint sneaking out and getting on those. And of course I've I put drop cloth across every place that has access to the front of the cab. Now the idea is to paint the roof and basically every exposed metal surface, as well as spray paint inside the cavities here in order to coat it with this ceramic insulating paint. This is the paint that I'm going to be using. This is lizard skin ceramic insulation, and we'll see how well it works. I fashioned myself a handy dandy little coat hanger stirrer, because one of the concerns I have is I actually bought this last year, I think December maybe of last year, and without thinking about it, I didn't realize there's no way I was going to be able to paint that soon. So it's been sitting around for a long time. I've been turning it upside down and over, quite frequently, because I bought it externally. I don't think I can take it to Home Depot or Lowe's to get it shook, so because they won't do that. I think I've tried that before. So I've got to stir it up myself. So I made this, and we'll see how it works. So I just took the lid off of this stuff, and you can see that this is thick stuff. It looks like the consistency of mud. This is going to be a challenge. Now I understand why they asked me to buy this special paint gun, which it sprays a very thick spray. Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. Well, I have to tell you that after this first attempt, I am not impressed. This stuff is not spraying on very well at all. Maybe it's the gun that I bought, but the few places where I just got frustrated and started smearing it with my hand, it looks like it's going on. So, I think I'm just going to go with the old paintbrush and see how that works, because this is going to take forever. I mean, I spent about 15 minutes just doing this little section here. Okay, well, the best laid plans of mice and men. There is absolutely no way that I was going to be able to spray that ceramic skin paint on the interior of my van. All right, so I just resorted to the good old paintbrush. This was really like painting roof tar on your van. Now I have no doubt that this is going to work, but originally my plan was I didn't want to have any metal exposed that would represent a conduit for heat coming either into the van or going out of the van. And by God, if I didn't have incentive then, I've got incentive now, because this stuff is ugly. Wait till you see it. Well, this is hard to see, but in the sunlight you can see sort of the consistency, and this really is lizard skin. Boy, this stuff dry. Well, I just screwed it up. See that? Well, I'm going to give this all a second coat. I've got enough paint left to go around and touch up everywhere and give another coat as best I can. Now my goal of getting right inside those cavities, spraying inside those cavities, well, forget that. I did poke in there as much as I could, and I have no doubt that this is going to have an impact, because this is thick stuff. I guess one concern I will have is that it might flake off because of the way I put it on, but I have no idea how you could spray this stuff. Either you would have to buy a much better spray gun than I've got, or I don't know what the solution is. I mean, it is really, it looks like it's good stuff, you know, and that it will form a good heat shield because it is like tar. But it is a pain to get on, to put on. And let me tell you, the best advice is to buy one of these painter suits like you saw me wearing there, because by golly, you're going to need it, because you're going to be swimming in this stuff by the time you're done. Another good piece of advice is to buy a whole batch of those thin rubber gloves, because you go through those like crazy too. I'm going to put another coat of this on probably tomorrow, but it definitely took a lot longer than what I thought it was going to take, and it was a much messier job, but by golly, I'm going to see it through. So I'll report back on the final product here. So just to give you an idea of the consistency of this stuff, I notice here I slopped over a little bit onto the outside of the van. My idea is to, you know, come back and scrape this, but when you start pushing this, you see that it's almost kind of rubbery. All right, so that's kind of the consistency of it when it dries. So that'll be pretty easy to clean up, I think. So my idea was to spray on several thin coats of this paint, you know, spray on one thin coat today, and I thought it would take me about 15 minutes, you know, because it's a pretty small area, and then let it dry, and then tomorrow spray on another thin coat, and just keep on spraying on thin coats until the paint was all gone. Well, that's not going to work, and so you saw how thick this paint really is, and so now my biggest concern is that it is so thick that it might rub off or flake off or whatever, and I guess I'm just going to have to live with that. I'm going to touch it up, put as many coats on as I can. Now, that is a 2-gallon can of paint that I bought, and today I used about probably 3/5 of it to 2/3 of it on this initial coat. And I can see now that as it's drying, it's kind of shrinking a little bit and exposing places. And so I'm going to, tomorrow I'll go back and I'm going to paint over everything, all of the spots that I see. And eventually I'm going to use up all of the paint. And my hope is that, you know, painting over the previous coats, I may be able to get some more adhesion between the coats of paint. But in any case, I probably am always going to be vulnerable to rubbing it too hard and then the paint coming off. Well, my plan is for the rest of the installation, I'm going to line the walls and the ceiling and the floor with 1/2 inch of foam board insulation. And then over that, I'm going to put what they call duck cloth, which is the same kind of cloth that's used in these white safari tents that you see, and they're supposedly waterproof, so that will create kind of a vapor barrier, and attach that to the walls and the ceiling, and also skin my cabinets with that material. At least that's the current plan. And so that will give me a vapor barrier. It will hide the foam board. It will trap you know, any kind of, hopefully, vapors or anything like that might outgas. I don't think they will. And if I make that, you know, if I cover up every black spot in the back of that van now with insulation, I may use a combination of foam board and Thinsulite, cover up every black point in there. I'm going to have a pretty well sealed, you know, interior cabin. I'm going to liberally put holes in the floor to accommodate my fridge and my electrical equipment venting, a heater that I'll put in there, and then also an exit for my gray water. So, you know, there are lots of little holes that I'm going to be drilling in the bottom of the van to create ventilation, and we'll see how it goes. You know, at this point, you know, I wasn't going to start this paint job, realize that I couldn't spray it on, and then just stop and go buy and maybe another fancier gun or whatever. That just wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do this today. So I resorted to the paintbrush. Now they say you're not supposed to use a paintbrush, but actually it doesn't look too bad in there, and I'm hoping it'll firm up so that it'll work pretty well.
You know, when I bought the van, I carefully took out all the panels, the door panels and the panels and the sides of the van and everything, and I organized it very carefully because I thought, you know, when the time comes for me to sell the van, I'll be able to put those panels back in, restore it to its original condition. Now, well, after this ceramic paint job, I think that ship has sailed. Let me show you what it looks like now after my second touch-up. I probably have one more touch-up to go, but I think it's pretty much the way it's going to be.
All right, so let's take a look at this. Hopefully I can get a good exposure. It is pretty much flat black everywhere. And it's a little deceiving because it does tend to shrink a little and then expose some white spots, but it's also hard to see what spots are really white underneath and what spots are just reflections of light. So I have to do it in a different kind of light in order to see what it looks like. But gosh, take a look at this. You know, this is rough stuff. I have a feeling that it's going to work pretty well. The biggest challenge is going to be covering this up so it isn't so darn ugly. All right. And as I said, if before I had incentive not to have any metal showing, I really have incentive now. I think that the results of this job are either going to horrify you or sell you on this ceramic paint. But I'll be taking some measurements soon to figure out if it was really worth the effort.